So the sugya that we're still in is understanding the seder of Melechas HaMishkan. That the kior, right, the one kli that's missing, right, is put in this week's parsha, right. Right. So first of all, it's not in Parshas Truma where it should be Iker be, because that's the parsha of all the Kalim, right? It's not even in Tetzaveh where it might be samuch to the Mizbach HaKteris. Right? It's put in Parshas Sisa, but not directly after Mizbeach HaKteris. But the Torah is mafsik, with the tzivui of machzis hashekel, which is mamish lo mina inyan, seemingly. And of course, it's related because they use that money to buy korbanos, but it's not. If we're talking about right now the construct of the Mishkan. So Torah is mafsik in machzis hashekel, which is eno mina inyan klal. Then gets back to the kior, and then gets back to keteris, right? Because first is the spices that go in the Shemen HaMishcha, and then the Keteris Mamish. Right? So really the proper order would have been like this: to put the Kior in Parshas Truma with all the other Kalim, right? And if for reasons that we explained last week, if the part of the Mizbach HaKeteris had to be in Parshas Tetzaveh, for reasons that we explained, so you would think that it should be so Kior Bechlal should be in Parshas Truma. It should be right after the Mizbach Torah, so open up Parshas Sisa with the Keteris, right? And then get to Machzis HaShekel. Right, so we have to understand the Seder, that the Torah was mafsik in Gansen with Machzis HaMishkan, with Machzis HaShekel, then went to the Kior, and then got back to the Keteris. That's our in. Right, so now another thing that we asked is that after Melechas HaMishkan in this week's parsha is the tzivui of Shabbos. So Rashi says, when it comes to teach you, even though you're going to be very zealous about Melechas HaMishkan, right, be sure to keep the Shabbos. But Rashi in next week's parsha, Parshas Vayakhel, points out that when Moshe Rabbeinu was, Makil, Klal Yisrael together, so he tells them about Shabbos and then Melechas HaMishkan, and why? For the, to teach you, right, that Shabbos is not nidche by Melechas HaMishkan. So the Hakdama of Shabbos to Melechas HaMishkan, right, is to teach you that the Mishkan is not Doch Shabbos. But we see from this week's parasha that it doesn't have to be that way. Right? In this week's parasha we have Shabbos after Melechas HaMishkan, and the Torah says, Ach es Shabbos, but keep the Shabbos. Meaning Melechas HaMishkan is not Doch Shabbos. So it's not be'echrech that Melechas HaMishkan has to be that Shabbos has to be said before Melechas HaMishkan. To teach you that it's not Doicha Shabbos, who a dynamic be after, right? As per this week's parsha, Elamai, there are bechinot chalukot, which we're going to explain. This is going to be one of the mainly discussed in next week's shir, right? But for this week, I'll put him to understand the bechina of when Shabbos is said after Melechas HaMishkan, l'umat. And when it's said before Melechas HaMishkan, in next week's parasha. All right, but this issue of the relation between Shabbos and Melechas HaMishkan is not going to be fully discussed in this particular share. It's going to be finished off in next week's share, but we're going to start. All right, just understanding the contrast that in Kisisa it's Nechsa Mishkan then Shabbos and Achas Shabbos, but don't be Machal Shabbos. Lumat in Parshas Vayakel, it's keep Shabbos and then and the fact that Shabbos is first is the limud. That Nechsa Mishkan is not Deicha Shabbos.
Is the Rab saying that Be'etzem, what Rashi's saying here, that you shouldn't be overzealous, as he put it, and next week that it isn't Docha? That basically is the same idea in Rashi. Yeah.
I think it's the same halacha.
Yeah.
Just,
Okay.
but I'm saying Rashi over there says the
I hear it's a little bit different
mikach.
Lashon. I didn't know whether there was some subtlety in Rashi, the way
No,
Rashi.
because he wants to be miyashiv it with the fact that it's
Before
the
or
Lashon.
after?
Even though you're very zealous, but but that's what he says that the fact that it's mukdam is what teaches you. All right, these are bechinot chalukot that we're gonna, explain more next week. But hopefully we're going to start. This doesn't necessarily have to be enumerated as one of the opening kashas, but we are going to touch upon it in course of this year. All right. So now, the other main topic of our parsha, right, is the Cheta Ego and Shviras Haluchas, and of course the Tikkun that happens thereafter. Right, so we have to.
The Rav is using Lashon Saginahu or about the Tikkun. You mean killing all the people who are involved? Is that what the Rav?
No. The Luchas Shnius.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. So now we have to understand why they're all in the same parsha, right? In Parshas Kisisa, the Torah lumped together these aspects of the Mishkan, Shmira Shabbos, and then the whole sugya after that is Cheta Ego and trying to pick up the pieces, literally, pick up the pieces from Shmira Saluchas and pull it all back together. Kol shkein lefi shitas Rashi in this week's parsha that says mefurish, right? Rashi is of the shita that historically, Rashi is the shita that holds that historically the whole tzivui Mlechas HaMishkan came after Chet HaEgel. Right. As we've mentioned already a few times, there's a machloikas. So like Rashi, for sure, it needs more of an explanation. Bishop, like the other sheets, we could just say the Torah is going in chronological order. After the tzivui of the Mishkan, Klal Yisrael sinned, and this is actually one of the Mefarshim on Rashi asked, why couldn't Rashi just say this? The tzivui of the Mishkan is happening during the 40 days Moshe Rabbeinu was in the mountain, right? And that's when Klal Yisrael sinned, and he comes down, he sees, and then the parsha's mityashev in his perfect historical order, but that's not Shitas Rashi, right? That's what one of the Mefarshim on Rashi asked on Rashi. Why couldn't Rashi just say, the reason why it's all together is, very simple. The tzivui was in the 40 days, he was in the mountain, and that's when Klal Yisrael did it on the 40th day. So after he got the last, installment of the Ketares, and they did it. He came down, he saw it. Ma baya. Right. So that's where you could say, lefi the other shitas that hold that the tzivui of Mlechas HaMishkan was going to happen even if they wouldn't have been in Egel. But like Rashi, the kasha is even stronger.
Right.
Why are these all in one parsha? The Torah was, put this, these inyonim of the Mishkan was koved before Chet HaEgel. Right. Right. So according to Rashi, it's a mamash a big kasha. Not that it's also ha'ara like the other, that's why they should all be in the same parsha. Right. So the Indian is like this. So, at the end of last year, we mentioned, something that needs a little bit more of harchava, that the inyan of the Keteres is bigger than the Adam. It's bigger than the hasagas of the Adam. All right, we touched upon it, briefly, and maybe we should recap that, what the hasog, what the Keteris is connected, right? The fragrance, right? The deeper Havana that goes beyond where the eyes reach. You know, we mentioned, En L'Dayin Mashen of Rose, but Mashiach will be Morach V'Doin. You can even smell and judge. The special depth that there is in the smell that's connected, how it smells, mamash, a sense of the neshama, whereas the guf is a partner in the other four of the five senses. The Gemara says, the pleasure of the smell is a pleasure of the neshama. It's a depth to smell, and that's the Indian of the Keteris, that this is connected to deep perception. Everything is kashur to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we explained. Even the kochos hara serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are not shtei reshuyas. We explained already. That's the Malcha Mavis Dafka was the one that explained to Moshe Rabbeinu the Segulas of the Keteris. And that's part of the angel's submission to Moshe Rabbeinu. So Malcha Mavis also wanted in. And he was Megal Keteris also. The Ra also is kashur to the toe, and that's rumors in the 11th spice, the chelbana, that recho Ra, and that's also even in Tanis Tzibur, Shem and Parshon, Tanis Tzibur, Kayadua, and this is a darga that's above human intelligence, because human intelligence is toifus the toiv and the Ra as opposites and irreconcilable, which is a good perception to. Useful perception to do our job correctly, of being sur me'ra v'asei tov, but it's not the emes. It's the right perception for our job. But the emes is bigger than our hasagas and bigger than what our job is, because ba'omek ha'inyan, everything comes from Ribono Shel Olam. Right? And that's the Avodah Keteris. And the Avodah Keteris is Lamala from the Adam. That's why the Avodah Keteris is called Avodah B'chashai. Right? It's secret. Secret. But in Kolshken, the Avodah Keteris is what's done Lifnai V'Lifnim, which is beyond where the Adam reaches. And we mentioned from the Maharal that the Yevonim with their Seichel Enoshi only were sholet on the Heichel. We find they were Metama the Heichel. That's the Lashon Chazal. That the Maharal points this out. Right? So he says, because, Heichel is Gematria 65, says the Maharal, Yovan is Gematria 66, right? One more than the Heichel, but as the Maharal points out, they're only showed on the Chitzonius of the Heichel, right? The Pneumius of the Heichel, right? Which is Mushpa from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Kohanim feel that, and that's why Kohen is Gematria 75, 65 and plus the hidden Yud of Kedusha. Heichal, the Maharal says there's a hidden yud mitzad the tzeri, the pronunciation of the word. You have a yud mitzad the pronunciation, mitzad the nikud, and the yud that's mamish from the actual spelling of the word. And that's so with the hidden yud, it's Heichal from goes to 75, which is the gematria Kohen, and that's why the Kohanim were the ones that fought the Chashmonaim, the Kohanim fought off the Yevonim, because the Kohanim, even though their ikra avodas in the Heichal, but they perceive the pneumius of the Heichal, which is the shefa that comes into the Heichal from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And that scene of that Pach Shemen that the Yevonim couldn't get was Munach B'chotmo Shel Kohen Gadol, says the Maharal, because the Kohen Gadol goes Lifnai V'Lifnim. And the Chochma and Oshit can only reach the Chitzonius of the Heichal. But the Madrega of Kodesh HaKadoshim is beyond the Chochma and Oshit. And that's why when the Kohen Gadol went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim to do the Keteris, right? So we brought away from the Yerushalmi and the Zohar, it was b'madregas Malach, not b'madregas Adam. Right?
What was the gematria of 66 that the Heichal is?
Heichal 65. Yovan is 66. Yovan.
And what's that supposed to show us?
That's why they were able to be Metama the Heichal. The Seichel and Oshi could reach beyond the Heichal, but only beyond the Chitzonius of the Heichal. The Pneumius of the Heichal that is Mushpa from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which of course the letter Yud, we've said many times, is the letter of Kedusha, and that's the hidden Yud of Heichal. That's the gematria of Kohen. Kohen is 75. The Kohanim, Bnei Chashmonai, feel in the Heichal the Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that permeates it. And that's why they were able to kick the Yevonim out of the Heichal. So even though the Kohanim don't walk in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but they perceive the Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that's mitpashet in the Heichal. And that's why they had the koach to kick the Yevonim out of the Heichal. As the word of Kohanim feel the influence that the Kodesh HaKadoshim has on the Heichal. And that's the common denominator between the Heichal and the Kodesh HaKadoshim is the Keteris. That's the Keteris is in the Heichal, and the Keteris of the daily, and there's the Keteris of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Right? But that's also the kunz of, the Yevonim, they didn't reach the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It was just they were oblivious to it, because it's Lamala from Hasaga and Noshit. And the Kohen Gadol, who does go in, so the oil that was Munach B'chotbo Shel Kohen Gadol had the influence of the Kohen Gadol, which goes L'fnai L'fnim. That's why they couldn't find that jug of oil. It wasn't a coincidence. Right? Because that jug of oil was connected the koach of Kohen Gadol, Munach B'chotbo Shel Kohen Gadol. It's not the koach of L'fnai L'fnim, which is above Sechol and Noshit, which the Yevonim were the biggest in Sechol and Noshit. Right? So, but it goes back to this inyan that the Keteris is the inyan of Lamala from Sechel Enoshi. Right? So it's Lomi Baya, the Keteris that's burnt. It's also, the Maral writes elsewhere. I think also in the Ner Mitzvah. Actually, it also says in the Or Chodesh, the Ikar Remes to Mordechai, Vakchachla B'samim Rosh, more drawer, it was actually the spices put in the Shemen HaMishcha. Right? But it's the same board, right? Shemen HaMishcha elevates. It's Moshech that's what was Mekadesh the Kalim. So again, the ending of the fragrance is beyond, and that's why that's what gives the Shemen a din of Shemen HaMishcha, the Maharal says, and that's why the Shemen elevates and pulls up. So the fragrance, so that's the common denominator. The fragrance of Shemen HaMishcha. The fragrance of the Keteris is all connected to Darga that's Lamala. Right. So Heavy Omer, that the avoda of Keteris, be it which shares a common denominator with the Shemen HaMishcha. Right, the fragrance is right. This is all connected of what's considered lamala from the darga of the Adam. Right, it's bigger than the person. The Rebbe wants to give us something that's bigger than us, and that's good because that way we'll become bigger. Right, that was shaykhs to what's bigger than us. Right. So it's a davar nifla mode, right? That after the Torah introduced the Mizbach HaKteris in Parshas Tetzaveh, the end of Parshas Tetzaveh, right? Right. Explaining, outlining what the full potential of the Mishkan is. That the Mishkan is now to give us madregas that are not just makbil, parallel to the Adam, but even the Adam HaMetukan, right? But also to give us dargas that are superhuman. Right? That's what that the idea of that's what the Mishkan is about. Right? And that's introduced with the Mizbach HaTorah. This Mishkan is not going to just be metaken the tzelem. That's the Indian of the Kalim, the other Kalim, Tikkun HaTzelem, right? And the Beget, Tikkun HaLevushim, right? But it's also going to give you dargas that are bigger than you. And we also bring a chalois of even higher madregas, right? So the question is, in what way are those madregas chal on the Adam? How can the Adam hold something that is bigger than him? That is the question that needs to be answered. That's a very simple, straightforward, logical, and philosophical question. In what way can a man hold what's bigger than himself? And that's what the Torah opens up. Ki tisas rosh b'nei Yisrael. Right? Says the Medrash Rabbah, Moshe Rabbeinu asked, B'ma teromem karnam shel Yisrael. How are you going to raise up Klal Yisrael? And that Rebbe adds a kitisa. They have Nesius Roish. Nesius Roish is the inyan of having something over your head. Kitisas Rosh B'nei Yisrael. The first half of the parasha is coming to explain, right, how the Adam is capable of having Nesius Rosh, which is this inyan of having madregas that are over his head. Nesius Rosh, raising up the head high, higher than where it naturally reaches. Raising the head. Reaching dargas that are over your head. Nesius Rosh. Right? Oh, so now with this, and that's what needs to be explained first before we come to the Keteris B'Paul. Right, we introduced the concept that there's of the Mizbach HaKteris. There are madregas that are going to be, you get madregas that are even beyond. So now the question is, how can the Adam hold these madregas? And that's what the Torah comes to answer. Ki tisas Rosh B'nei Yisrael. Medrash says that ki tisas Nesius Rosh Mamish. Rosh B'nei asked, "B'ma teroimem karnam shel Yisrael." And Rav Rosham answered kitisa, bekitisa, the yin of machzis Hashem. And with this, we're coming to a different mahalach, not in contradiction to what we said in Parshas Mishpatim, but another aspect of the yin of machzis hashekel, which will be another pan, another angle on the inyan of why ha'asher lo yarbe v'adal lo yamid. Right. We're going now on the etzem word shekel. Right. This coin is called shekel. Right. And it's machatzis a shekel, half a shekel. Right. Shekel means to weigh. Now, to weigh, right, is also, it's not just a physical action, it is a mental activity, particularly associated with what we call das. There's chachma, and there's bina, and there's das. So chachma, that's what you hear from your Rebbe. That's information that you've gathered. Bina is what you figure out for yourself, and then there's das. Das is now how to weigh out the situation. That's why you find, in Chazal and in Poskim a lashon of shikul hadas. There could be a ta'ut b'shikul hadas. Now, ta'ut b'shikul hadas is not the same as toeh b'dvar mishnah. Toeh b'dvar mishnah means you're not a chacham. You don't know your stuff. You don't know, right? And there's not a ta'ut b'dvar mishnah, which is a pegia in chachma, right? There's something called ta'ut b'shikul hadas, right? Right. But the etzem musad, the etzem expression, I mean to say, of shikul hadas, right? That the das, weighs out the situation, right? Right. It's also find the Maharal that he says das is keneged psak halacha. He says the Maharal says chachma is keneged Torah shebechsav, and bina is keneged Torah shebal peh. All the pilpul. Das is keneged psak halacha. Psak halacha is weighing out the situation. There's X and Y and Z svaros l'schus, and X and Y is A, B, C svaros l'chayva, and the psak is to weigh it out, and this is what you do. And that's also a bar das, weighs out every situation, right, to know how to conduct himself accordingly. Right.
The Rav gave a a mushel for Shikol Hadas in the Shir, which I thought was rather good. Is there, I remember? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't leave it. Like in everyday life, a certain situation. Can't remember what it was now. He gave like a very down to earth way of understanding the concept of Shikol Hadas, not related dafka to Torah in Yonim as much as just like everyday life.
Yeah, I don't remember what I said in Shir. Maybe you could help me, but I do remember what I wrote in my sefer, that Rav Hutner's mashal for a person who has no das. Rav Hutner's famous mashal said a guy walks in, to a base ovel.
Yeah, the Rav talked about this one other time before, many weeks ago, right?
Bermuda shorts,
right.
Ray-Ban, and
right.
Mitzvah Gedol Yom Simcha, and even if he's in hell, it's the best thing for him,
Right.
It's kapara, right? So that's
no Shikol Hadas.
That's no so like being totally detached from the reality of the situation. But das is to lay out the situation. Whatever. Okay, now I can't remember what I said. You wanna, right? You wanna, someone's annoying you, right? So now, on the one hand, if you confront him, on the one hand, maybe he'll stop. But he'll have hard feelings because it came down too hard. But if you're too soft, he won't stop doing
right.
it. But you'll still,
Okay.
but you won't ruin your relationship with him, right? So the pool of das is to weigh out the factors and then come up with the proper course of action. And this is the pool that's parallel to psak halacha, and that's what Chazal mean told b'shikol hadas. That was. It doesn't mean a man did amaratzis. That's told b'dvar mishnah. Told b'dvar mishnah is mamash, tos gomer, right? There's a chiluk in halacha between tos and shikol hadas and a tos in dvar mishnah, right? But shikol hadas, he didn't weigh it out correctly, So it's not the same type of tos. Kayidua. The told b'dvar mishnah, mamash the whole psak's bottle. It's like nothing, right? And that's the pool of psak halacha, and that's also the pool of bechira. Really, bechira weighs out the two sides, and then you choose. And that's all related to the das. But here's the amazing thing, right? Here's the amazing thing. Right, and this is a very, very, very important point. Right. So since das, but before we get to this important point, let's just build up a little more. Since das is a pool of weighing out, so that as you know, your scale has to be balanced. And not just the pshat. You have to be honest in your weights and measures. The machine called the scale has to be perfectly balanced. If the central rod is noita more to the right than to left, it's not going to be a good balance. It's only a good balance if it's exactly in the middle. Right? So now we're talking about not the weights and measures, we're talking about the machine called the scale. Right? In the Odom, that's the etzem nekuda of das. Right, the weights and measures, this is between me and you. I don't know if you have to get so technical with the reader, but if mitzad the adam, we're talking about the internal scale, the weight and measures. That's important to have accurate weights and measures. So that's learning the sugyas well. So those are the weights and measures that you put on a scale. But you have to be bori in your das. That the CPU, Central Processing Unit, and Kilishoinai, Central Processing, has to be exactly center. If a person is off, if the scale is broken, even working with the most accurate weights and measures is not going to help. Because if the central rod is too far to the right, not exactly in the middle, so even working with the most accurate, the measurements are going to be false. Because the scale is broken, even though the weights that you're using are good weights. The Tzvei didn't. People often, some people have a healthy mind, but they work with wrong weights and measures because of their ignorance. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about hafuch, right? That even the best weights and measures will give you wrong measurements if the etzem machine called the scale is off center.
I don't know if it can be compared to like hardware and software in a computer. The scale, the center rod being the hardware. If
Well,
you
I use the mushroom, the CPU, even though I
Okay.
don't exactly know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
Central
It's a similar
processing
idea.
unit.
Right. It's a similar idea.
Yeah,
You're
so
saying you can have all the tochna in the world, but if the machine itself isn't functioning properly, so the tochna, that stuff will give you all skewed information as a result.
That's right. So I'm talking about the etzem koach shkila, the etzem koach two-way, as opposed to the weights and measures. The etzem koach two-way, which in the Arm is called the midah of das. Then there's the weights and measures that you put on that scale, which is libun halacha. You have to make sure to take your sources, from reliable sources. Those are your weights and measures, the sugyas, right? Gemara and Rishonim, not like making things up, right? But I'm not talking about, the weights and measures, which should come from Mekorot Ne'emanim. I'm talking about the Odom Gufa, the Bar Das. The Bar Das has to have a balanced scale that he's working with. That's the Indian of Machzis HaShekel. Be exactly at half point. Half point means center. Machzis HaShekel is the Indian that the Machzis HaShekel is Keneged Klal Yisrael being Zeiche to the Midah of having Das. Perfect balanced das. And in this, ha'asher lo yarbe va'adal lo yamit. It's niflamo. So, so in the Beis Yaakov from Ishbitza says, right, ha'asher lo yarbe, right, don't be overconfident. Va'adal lo yamit means don't be underconfident. The person's nekuda of das should be exactly point center. Overconfidence throws it off, and underconfidence throws it off. And that's what Asher lo yarviv dal. When he says Asher shouldn't have too much bitachon in his koach, and a dal yomid shouldn't go into yiush, right? One can even understand in very earthy terms that a rich man might think that he doesn't have to work things out totally accurately because he has enough money to make up for his mistakes, right? But that's not the end of Machzis HaShekel. The end of Machzis HaShekel is Am Yisrael through that is being Zeiche to the Midah of Das. The Midah of Shikul HaDas. That's the Zgula of giving Machzis HaShekel. And mitzad that, everyone's equal. It's about, through giving the Machzis HaShekel, as it were, as it were, Am Yisrael is being meiser their Shikul Das to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you're meiser to me, Baruch Hu is mizaki you to have a healthy Shikul HaDas. And that's called Nesius Rosh. You've raised up your head. Now, what does that mean? So, a davar nifla about being balanced, right, is that you could put a lot of weight on something if it's perfectly balanced. If something is unbalanced and you put some weight on it, it'll bend and snap. Like dok v'tishkach is davar nifla mode. That even like very thin things, if it's perfectly balanced, you could pile up tremendous amount. If it's all perfectly balanced, it could hold it. If it's off balance, or if the thing itself is off balance, it bends and snaps.
There's got to be some kind of a ratio or principle that expresses that idea. Because I know exactly what the Rav is talking about. I'm just wondering if in science there's some name given to such a principle.
Probably. There's a good question for Yoshua. He's a physicist.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can consult with him on this. But But here's the nakuda. So even though a das generally means what you understand very well, what you've internalized, right? Even though that's what it generally means, and it means that also here. However, if a person is zeicha to be a big bar das, right, which means being perfectly balanced in his das, you could pile up on him hasagot that he does not fully understand because they're beyond him, but he will not go wrong with it because he's balanced. A person who's a big bar das, even if the das is not yet makif and not able to internalize these hasagas, but since he's a big bar das, he won't mishandle these hasagas. He'll be able to walk with them and work with them until he could internalize them. And at that point, you will pile upon him even higher hasagas that he'll have to work with until he internalizes. But he can work with it. He can go with it because he's balanced.
Is the Rav saying something like a chok or some other thing, maybe even worse than that, something that's to the Sechel Enoshi not illogical in mitzvahs, that he'll be able to perform that with a better...
Even if the Sechel can't take it in, which is generally the pool of das as opposed to emuna, and
right.
We're really getting into the relationship between emuna and das. Emuna is what's l'mala me'aseichel, and das is what's been internalized. But you could pile on the das things that are be'emuna, and it can go if the das is balanced,
Right.
Because he'll have enough das not to mishandle, because he's balanced. He won't mishandle what's been thrust upon him. All right? Simple mashal. A very heavy crown. Very heavy crown. It goes on top of the head, right? Keep the head straight, it won't hurt. And you lean a little bit to the side, you'll find the crown will topple, right? You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like a very heavy crown. Keep your head straight, it'll sit, right? If your head's crooked and you put it on the crown, it'll make your head bend to, right? Like a very heavy crown. That's good for the inyan of Keser, the meat of Keser. It's lamala, that's lamala from Chachma and Bina, right? So Keser you wear on top of your head. And with this we're going to get very soon, right? The Indian of the Ksarim of Nasa Venishwa that Klai Yisrael had prior to the Cheta Ego. These two madregas, Nasa, that Keser Nasa, Keser Nishma, they're called Ksarim because they were above the Seichel. All right, but we're going to get back to that. Right? But let's just get the Yesod down. I mean, there's going to be a lot of, you're going to have to arrange this. But let's get the Yesod down. Right? That the Yesod is that a person can carry, if he's a very big bar das, which means balanced in his das, you could pile on top of him very big hasagas, and it's possible for him to work with these hasagas even though he has not internalized them. They're piled on top of him. But if he's balanced, he's not going to mishandle it, and it's shaykh for him to go with it until the point where he could internalize it, and then of course you'll pile on even more hasagas, right? So that's the end of the machzis hashekel. Klaizo, it's called nesius rosh. That beschus the machzis hashekel. Klaizo zeicha to nesius rosh. Klaizo zeicha, right, to be perfectly balanced in their das, that we could pile upon them hasagas that are even l'mala me'ad das, and it won't break them. It won't break them. If you're perfectly balanced, you won't be breaking it. You'll know, even though you're not fully masig these madregas, but you won't go wrong with them either, because you're balanced. You'll know how to handle. You'll know what you do know. You know what you don't know. You're a bardas. You know what you know, and what you don't know, you're going to ask someone, and you'll work with it, because you're balanced, right? And that's the end of the machzis hashekel. That's mizakas to nesius rosh. That we can carry things on our head, carry things lamala me'arosh. And it's again, this maramis to the ksarim of Naasev and Nishma. It's a mention in this week's parsha, by the way. That on Shabbos, Moshe Rabbeinu gives us back the crowns. Boy, we'll get to that. Right? That's the Nesius Rosh of Keser Nasa, Keser Nishma that we had until the Cheta Ego. These were madrigas that were bigger than us. Right? But we're still discussing, and that's what this is all connected to Keteris, which is the Reach of Besomim that there was at the time of Matan Torah, like we explained in last week's year. And it's so connected to Besomim, so there's also Keser Nasa and Keser Nishma. Right? Right? And that's the Nesius Rosh. Well, but what's it Chalan? How can you have pile Nesius or be Nesa on the head? Carry on the head. Well, Machatzis HaShekel. If you're perfectly balanced in your das, B'li Lintot Yaminu Small, we could pile on you Hasagas that are bigger than you also. But there's another Tanai after that. That's the Kior. The Kior says the Beis Yaakov from Ishbitza is Siluk HaNegius. And he says that's in all the Ishbitzer writings. That's the end of the Tilas Yadayim. The shorsh of it is in the Kior. Siluk HaNegius. Why your hands might be tameh? Because you might have touched something. So even if even the Kohanim had to always do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before every new avod, even though they were shomer their Yadayim, because you always have to do the avod of Siluk HaNegius. Being Nogeya is to take off balance. That's the Negius. Negiya is anti-balance. Machzis HaShekel is to be kover, the Indian of balance. Right? But then the Torah to give you the shmira of the Kior. The Kior is Siluk HaNegius, because being Nogeya ba'adavar takes you off the balance. So imagine if you pile something very heavy on, right? You pile something very heavy on, the slightest Negiya will topple the whole thing. And that's the Kior, which is the shmira against that. And then you could come to the Keteris B'Torah. And then after that, the Torah talks about the... now you're ready for the Keteris. That's how you have Kalim for the Keteris. Because after you have, a balanced das, and after you have Siluk HaNegius, to keep yourself balanced, then you can have the avoid of the Keteris that's bigger than the other. Okay, so now it's a very important point that this is a perpetual balancing act forever and ever and ever. And the balancing act only becomes harder and harder and harder. You have to understand that the whole Indian of Tikkun is the Safra Tzniusa, which is the Zohar and Parsha, incorporating the Zohar and Parsha's Truma, says the whole Olam HaTikkun, the whole Tikkun of the Koiches Brias is the Indian of the Matkala, the Mishkan, which is Mitbaer in the Kisvei Ari, both in Prat. Olam HaTikkun, that's all beside Mishkan, balance, right? All the different forces in the Bria all have to be active. Each one to do its function in Gilui Kvot Shamayim. So that's a tremendous pella, right? Because they're contradictory forces. Generally speaking, the Chasodim and the Gvurus. I'm not even talking about Tov versus Ra. Even in a world that's Kulo Tov and without Ra, right? It's a very delicate balancing act. Because there's Chasodim and Gvurus. I'm talking about the Gvurus HaKdoshis. I'm not talking about the dinim that come from the Sitrach. I'm talking about the Gvurus HaKdoshis. You have the Chasodim and the Gvurus, the right side and the left side, right? Right. The Tikkun, which is all the Iris working together, not one at the expense of the other, as opposed to the Olam HaTohu, explains the Ramchal, is when the spheres are clashing. Right? Tikkun is totally in balance. Everything working together in cooperation, and that's mamish a balance that's kechut hasaira. And it comes out like this. The greater the tikkun, the more and more fine-tuned the balance. Which means, the greater the tikkun, the more and more delicate the state is. So first you have, going level state first is a very coarse balance, right? And then you fine-tune it more, and then you fine-tune it more, and fine-tune it more, and you come to a very delicate balance that's, kechut hasaira.
Rab said Bria, but the Rab means Adam over here.
But it's all the koiches also, because the koiches move, in a certain sync with the Adam. To the extent the Adam is matak in his midas, there's a parallel tikkun in the olamas. And when the Adam goes down, the olamas go down with him in a perfectly parallel way. You understand also in Achris Hayamim, right? Saying of world peace, or even Begar Zev and Keves, even that, it's balance. It's balance, right? All the koiches are there, but now they're not in a mahalach of. But all because everyone, that's called balance.
Is that the meat of Tiferes, Be'etzem?
That is the meat of Tiferes, yeah. And read that as Tiferes is the Amud Hadas, from the Anaf Hadas, right? The Amud HaEmtzais, which is the meat of Das. Chachma, the right side being on the left side, Das is in the middle. It's Shikol Das. Das is Shoikel. Right? Emes. Tiferes is, the meat that comes from the meat of Das. Chesed from Chachma, Gvura from Bina, Tiferes from Das. Kayadu. But you see what I'm saying? The greater the refinement, the more delicate the balance. When you're weighing gold, you use very, very, very delicate scales. But it goes huadinami. The more tikkun, the more the delicate the balance. Not just the more valuable, so the more every bit makes a little bit makes a big difference. But it goes the other way. The etzem musig of tikkun is balance, and the greater refinement, the more you reach even a more delicate balance. You're more down to the pirtei pratim, and the pirtei pratim, the balance becomes more and more and more and more delicate. Now with this we can understand what Chazal say on the pasuk Usvivav Nisara Ma'oid HaKadosh Baruch Hu Medaktek Im Svivav Kechut Hasaira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Medaktek. Right, now you would think, listen, if you're so close to God, can't you get like some protexia going? All right, so God doesn't do any protexia, but why should He judge me more harshly than anybody else? All right, say, fine, so no protexia. He's medaktik im svivav kechut hasaira. No, but it's Meruma is already in the first part of the pasuk. Svivav. Who's the center of the bria? Right, the Ribbon Shalom. You know. Right, who's the center? The Ribbon Shalom. And these are Svivav, those who are around him. These are people that are closest to center. Here's an amazing thing. If you're punkt in the center, close to center, the slightest nitiya could topple the whole building. So if you're far away, like the Russia that's so far off center, so you can even do big sins, it doesn't really shake the whole foundations of reality. But if your position is mamish by the nakuda of center, one kechuta saira could topple the whole building. So the tzaddikim, who are called svivav, they're around center, because of their central position in reality, one false move, kechuta saira, throws off the whole cosmic balance. And that's why I call it medaktikim svivav kechuta saira.
This is directly related to what the Rav was saying before about the rod in the scale. I hear a certain parallel going on. Do you express the same idea?
Slightly off.
Yeah.
It's
the same.
The whole thing.
Okay. No, because we've gone through a lot in the meantime until we get to this point. I didn't know whether it's expressing that idea from another way of looking. Okay.
So I'm trying to get to that. You know, the higher the refinement, the more delicate the measure, as if tikkun gets as to a finer and finer tuned balance. But with that is the danger. One false move throw. If it's a very coarse balance, new. Or if you put a chuta saira on one kaf of the moznayim, it's not going to make a difference. But if you move the central rod, chuta saira, the whole scale is broken. And that's Svivav, the tzaddikim, who are called Svivav, they're around point center, so HaKadosh was medaktik with them, Kechuta Saira, because one false move in them, mitzad of their central position, throws off the whole Bria.
It's a Metzias also. In addition to that, it's a meet of a Kodesh Baruch Hu to relate to them that way.
That is the reason.
Right.
Because they are Svivav, because they are so central, so Kechuta Saira throws everything off. And their Kechuta Saira could be paigim the Bria, more than, right? Now with this we can understand, right, a very simple question. Right? We talk about, we talk about Adam Rishon Kodem Achet, right? And we talk about Klal Yisrael before Chet Ego, and Chazal, and in the Sfarim Akdoshim, we are told that they were sort of a parallel situation of internally they were clean, the Yetzer Hara was mi bachutz. The Nefesh Chaim talks about this in Sha'ar Aleph, right? Adam Rishon, the Ra was mi bachutz before the Chet Etzadas, right? Right, the Ra was mi bachutz, with the Nachash, right, embodied by Nachash, and Klal Yisrael Pask by Mamad Har Sinai, Paska Zuham Masa. Paska Zuham Masa. Right? And then, like the Nefesh Chaim says, it's a Rashi in this week's parasha. The Satan, made an image. They thought it was Moshe's coffin. The Yetzer Hara was on the outside. They're mamish in a very parallel situation. The Yetzer Hara became on the outside. The Yetzer Hara is like from the outside doing parlor tricks. So here's a simple kasha. Right? The Nefesh Chaim doesn't relate to this, but a simple kasha like this. If the Yetzer Hara is not in you, it's outside of you. So why do you fall for it?
It's even more than that. How can it ever get in?
You're pure, right? You're pure.
Right.
You're pure on the inside.
Where does it even have a starting?
Just say, the Yitzhar is, if you're mamish clean on the inside, which was mamish case bottom, which I don't know if Christ was mamish the same level. They were on a parallel level, but right?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, without getting too technical, if you let's say you're mamish clean on the inside, right? So it can't be medamit to like a salesman that sweet talks you, because you're talking about in our world where you have your Yetzer Hara inside of you already, so he manipulates the confusion that's B'etzem inside of you already. But we're talking about Kodem, they were mamish clean on the inside. So how did it happen? But this is what we're saying. If your shlemus is a very delicate balance, so even an outside force can topple it. A little bit of a kick from the outside can knock over the whole binyan. Now, of course, this has to be a little bit more explained. I don't know if I explained enough in the shir, right? That be'emes, Adam Rishon, before the Chet, as well as Klai Yisrael by the Chet Egel, even though they had very, very high madregas, but they were bigger than themselves. They were balancing on top of themselves madregas that were above their hasaga. So by Klai Yisrael, the mashal is keser nasev and keser nishma. The keser is above the head. Adam Rishon also, with all his chachma, right, but he had still not totally internalized that chachma, the shleimus. Vaharaya, he had to fight with the nachash. He had to argue with the nachash. Right, the nachash is tainus. Right. So because the madregas that were upon them, right, were bigger than themselves. It was a delicate balancing act. If it's a delicate balancing act, one little push can knock the whole building over. So if it's on the outside, it's a lo mishaneh. Now with this, I didn't explain this well enough in Shir, or I didn't give it enough explanation. But we're talking about now when the delicate balance is above your das, right? Right. So it's like the mushal is like balancing something on your head. One small push can knock the whole thing over, and if it's a very heavy load, it can pull you down also, right? So now, things that are bidas, right, bidas, so that's like the muscle of like carrying things on your waist by your central, center of gravity. So that can't topple you over. But when you have madregas that are not yet internalized, so even though you're a big Baal Madrega, if it's not yet internalized, right? Which was the state of our Adam Rishon, even though he has a very, very high Madrega, he wasn't kinda bepnimius, all of the Madregas that were upon him. And that's Klai Yisrael also by Mamre Sinai. So even an external force could, that's what we find in throughout Chazal and Sfarim HaKadoshim. A little bit of negias could throw you off. Now you ask, how could a big person be thrown off by a little bit of negias? Because sometimes the big person has even bigger madregas that he's balancing on his das, and that's where the negias pulls him down. Now this is a small aspect, but it's not the main aspect of what what David Melch says. Lo alachti bigdolos u'b'niflos mimeni. I didn't go bigger than me, And what the Sforim warn you shouldn't learn Kabbalah before you're ready. You shouldn't go with madregas and chumras that you're not ready for, because that's mamish how it's very easy to knock a person down. But of course, most of the azharas and the Sfarim are talking about a more basic problem. They're talking about a person who's pre-machzis hashekel, right? That he's bichlal not balanced. So if he takes on high madregas, it'll crack him, right? But you should, right? So there's yesh lachalik, because most of the azharas that you find in the Musar Sfarim, in the Hasidic Sfarim, in the Kabbalah Sfarim, don't go too fast and don't go before you're ready. Most of the azharas are bichlal. We're talking about you're not even a big bardas enough to balance it, so that posting on these madregas will bichlal crack you because you're not in any way balanced. But there's also this inyan that even a perfectly balanced person, sometimes his high madregas, could be his downfall, because when he's just balancing them when it's balanced on his das, when it's pre-internalization, that in the process of being kaina a madrega, it's a process. First, the madrega is a little bit bigger than the other, and the other takes it on, and lot it gets internalized, and then after that you hoist on another madrega and kachazoleh. At that time, when the madrega is hoisted upon him and he's balancing it, there's a big enough bardas that he could take it on, but it's daika, take it on daika, right? At that point, he's very vulnerable that the negias could cause him not only to lose that madrega, but it could possibly pull down the whole other. Now we find big azharas in the Sfarim, that when a person is trying to attain Ruach HaKodesh, that's dafka when a Sitra Achra really could get him bad. Or of course, when a person's really, really ready, he's got to try it. Be aware of the sakana, that the Sitra Achra could come and try to send him false images to think that, it's a delicate state. So Koshkin, if you're not balanced, taking it on Bichlal will snap you right then and there. But even a person who's balanced, he's in a very big sakana at that time when it's because when it's post-internalization, so it's like that madrega is being carried on his belt by a center of gravity. When it's pre-internalization, when it's more begetter emuna that's being balanced on the das, the shikul das, so that's when, even a koach chitzoni, a negia, could pull him down. And that's what happened by Adam Rishon. That's what happened to Klaiso in this week's parasha. And that's why these things are all in the same parasha. That Klaiso by Maimed Ar Sinai, they were on a tremendously high madrega. It was not internalized yet. And that's why the negias and the ta'ut and shikul adas, vayarav ki boishes Moshe, they made a mistake in how to count, right? They told it could pull them down, even though the Yitzhak was external at that time. Now there's also two bechinas, there's two bechinas of lasid level, why these problems won't happen anymore. Right?
I'm sorry, is the Rav, okay, so the Rav explained about how Klal Yisrael at Har Sinai, so that explains of what the Rav emphasized at the beginning in the questions, the Nesinas Luchos and Chet Egel and Shviras Luchos. Kior, Shabbos.
I didn't get to Shabbos.
Okay.
Yet. I didn't get to Shabbos yet. So I'm breaking the order slightly for what I said in Shir.
No, I don't even know if I'm saying in the right order. The Rav just said a big statement, and I just want to make sure that I see how all of them have to do with this central lineage.
It's all the same sugya. That when it's a very delicate balancing act, it's, a slight natia can pull the whole thing down. And that's what happened. And that's why these things, the Torah is opening up about the process of being koine madregas that are bigger than us. And then the Torah goes on to tell the story, so even like Rashi that said this all historically was commanded after Chet Ego, but the reason why it's put before, the Fi Rashi, and so not that the other Mefarshim would be Sisa, the message is true, the feed all the Shitas, when you're holding in madregas that are be'etzem bigger than you, even the slightest negia could pull you down, because it's a delicate balancing act.
Now one can still ask on all of this, it's not fair. Right? The Rav didn't even mention, the Rav only mentioned this like Aga, but Kol Adam Godel Yitro Godel.
Right.
Right? It's a little fair. Like the Rav hinted at, haven't I stored up a lot of schuyot? Don't I have some protexia to be able to not let that happen? Why should it be that because of that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mamis on me this, I don't know whether you want to call it an expectation or this additional but very, very, very sensitive, there's a fragile das that's really above me that could cause my downfall. Where's the tzedek in that? You know, I hate to put it so simply. No, lo midu shechem, lo miuksecha. You know, you know that a person. I mean, when a person hears this and does internalize it, so he says, so you know what? Maybe it's not worth it for me. Once I get to, let's just even keep it in simple terms. I keep ikar halacha, no madregas. I keep the ikar halacha.
I sometimes feel that way. No, especially
I understand.
In the sort of warn about limud Kabbalah, you should know.
Right.
The more you go,
right, the dangers.
You know, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it has to do a little bit what we were talking about the last week with Noach Adam Shelo Nivra, V'achshav Shenivra, right? There's a striving that's necessarily, you know, you're supposed to reach your potential.
Yes. And that nisayon, that nisayon, you'll internalize the madrega. I mean, if you pass the nisayon, you'll internalize the madrega, but then you're going to move on to the next one.
But in the interim, in that intermediary stage,
yes,
that's when it's very fragile.
You're very fragile. Yeah. Right. It's always right. So that's why also so with this you can also understand when you understand that after the nisayon it becomes internalized. That's like carrying it on your belt as opposed to on your head, right? And then you have a new madrega on your head. So that explains what's going on with the big tzaddikim. On the one hand, you know, one false move, it's a kechuta Sarah, but I don't expect to see Rav Elyashiv in the disco. I won't see him there, right? You know, it's like so beyond his role. So we say gadol mechavero yitzro gadol imeno. So the Rashiva Zechron Livracha typed it up al pi the famous story with Ruvain and Bilhah.
Right.
So right.
It counts as if.
It counts as if.
Right.
It counts as if. But of course, the etzem doing the dirty act of so that of course he's past that. That's like carrying that madrega on his belt, right? He's carrying, but the Riboshim is mamis a more delicate balance of that madrega and a more. So for him, his balancing act was to not be mebalitzoy of it. But it's a main thing. It's a hemshech in a straight line hemshech of that Yetzirah of what for me and you would be to take your father's wife, right? For Reuven, you know, which for us might be over our head, right? Nebuch, right? But for Reuven, that was of course by his belt, right? But the delicate hemshech that Riboshim constantly does it to. When you take a madrega, internalize it, so he hoists another one, and kacha, the kacha. So his thing, like his hemshech, of Ashes Aviv, Pilegesh Aviv, was Bilbil Yitzroy Aviv. And that's Yitzro Gadol Imenu. Your Yitzhar, people think the Yitzhar is only at the belt. No. As you grow, he grows with you. So there's the Yitzhar of the belt, and there's the Yitzhar that, you know, continues to grow with you. As you have Nesius Rosh, he's there with you. Right. And that's Yitzro Gadol Imenu. The Yitzhar grows with you. Meaning, he'll challenge you at that new plane. Wherever's your nakuda of madrega that you haven't yet internalized. So of course, what you've internalized already, he's given up on that, right? Because it's so the new madrega that's a hemshech of that. That's where he'll take you on. Like you could never think that you left him in the dust. He grows with you, you know, and challenges you lefi your new madrega. Just the whole thing is that. If he could pull you down there, he might pull you down totally, like we explained. That's the big sakona. You know.
Uh-huh.
You know, that's It can pull you, so you throw you off balance, and you not only you lose that one new madrega, you can lose everything you had also. Yeah, that's the big sakana. So just as we point out, la'asid lavoi, right? There's two different dargas of defeating the ra. We find that l'sharas and Chazal that la'asid lavoi the ra that asid the Yitzhar is going to become chedvasa the shmaitza. Reb Tzadok quotes this a lot. I have to find the source. It's that the passions that we have will be geared towards Torah. It's one lashon Chazal, but there's the more famous lashon of how Hakadosh will shochet the Yetzer Hara. Right now, l'maaseh it's not a stira.
Those are the two madregas, to be shochet the Yetzer Hara and also to transforming it into a proper passion.
Right.
Okay.
So now, l'maaseh kacha. It's talking about two different bechinas. Now, of course, there's the way most Sfarim, reconcile these two statements. As it were, say he's there, but now he works for you, as opposed to he's shechted. He's not there anymore, right? Like ubila mavis lanetzach, right? Which also comes from the kochos hara, right? So the more common explanation, which I'm not being soiser, the more common explanation, just for derech hagav, is that there's two types of Yetzar. There's what the Yetzar is mishtalet on. He's mishtalet on your passions, but passions are betzim for good. So you just take the Yetzar away. So it's not really the Yetzar that gets converted to good, in so much as the types of stuff that the Yetzar was mishtalet on become free from him. But then the etzem ra is shechted. That's what most Sfarim say. But Lefi Dvorino, we not contradicting that, just looking from a different angle. And that's again, the difference between our madregas that have been internalized as opposed to our madregas that have not yet been internalized. Right? That our madregas that have been internalized, those are called our wars that we've conquered. And yet now, so since those madregas have been internalized, they're not lamala midas, they're in the das. So it's like carrying these madregas on your belt as opposed to carrying them on top of your head, right? So of course those are like the battles that we won. So that that ra could be converted litov. But in olam haba, the Rebbe Shem doesn't want it to be a stagnant experience. That's what Chazal say. Tzadikim en lem menucha, lo b'olam hazeh, v'lo b'olam haba, shemar yelchu mechayil ochayil. That and that's a famous question, right? Do we need emunah in olam haba? The answer is yes. We need emunah in olam haba because Rebbe Shem is going to be changing the shefa rapidly from second to second, right? Yelchu mechayil ochayil. That even in olam haba, we're going to have this process of having new oiris and new oiris and new oiris. And maybe the process will happen very, very fast. But of course, when the new ore is first introduced, it's above your head, right? And then, not lot, maybe it'll happen very fast. It gets, internalized, and Rebbe is megala a new ore. Otherwise, olam haba will get very boring. If it's the same ore, right, it'll get boring. That's what Chazal say, en lem menucha, right? We're not going to be resting. We're not going to be stagnating, right? The Rebbe is going to be megala, new shep.
Yeah, well, why does that have to do? I understand it, but
No, so I have to.
Emunah to me always has a lot to do with bechira, but we know that there's no bechira in olam haba, so I'm not sure.
No, so there's going to be madregas that are lamala from das when they're first revealed, then they become bedas, and then. But that process happens very fast in olam haba.
Yeah.
New iris, and then that aura gets old, and then But going from the new to the first, it's like when it's first introduced, it's a bigger hasaga than what you've ever known prior to that. And then you're masig, and then there's a new hasaga, and then there's the whole.
Is there effort? Is there a concept of effort in that sense? So I see it as all combined. The being a mamin, being a bocher, being a mishtadel lahasig. Is there that concept?
No, it's without effort. That's what yoshvim, but yet ein lem menucha. It's called sitting in one place. It's called en menucha elsewhere. It means it's without effort because all the effort was in olam hazeh.
Right.
But it's still a ongoing process of being megala new iris and new iris, and of course at the first second that the new or is nitgaleh, right? You have it kibyachol in the time that's parallel to emuna, because at the first second it's a new asaga you never had before.
Okay. In that
and
sense,
then
it's better. Okay.
Right.
I didn't understand what the Rav meant by emun. Okay.
That's the same name of Reb Chaim. I bring it in my sefer, not name of Reb Chaim, but I heard it. They say in Reb Chaim also. Even olam haba, you need emuna because there's never having it all worked out because there's new hasagas and new hasagas that the first time it's introduced, never looked at it that way before,
right.
But it's obviously true. That's called emuna.
Right.
And then when it's internalized, it's called das. Just in olam haba, it's like a very rapid, das hasagas, So you have to understand something, right? So even though in olam haba, we'll have a great deal of das. The Navi talks about umalar, it's deas Hashem, right? So mitzad, what there's das on, so that Yetzer Hara is conquered, right? So we say we conquered him, but you don't. The Rebbe Shlomo Olam Haba doesn't want it to be that when you're in that emuna phase, that the Yetzer Hara should have the ability to knock you over, right? So of course that's what it means. Hakadosh Baruch Hu shochet la Yetzer Hara, right? That in the sense that
There's no room for faltering.
There should be no room for faltering. But mitzad that you have to shech the Yetzer Hara. You have to shech the Yetzer Hara. That's the aspect of shochet la Yetzer Hara. The aspect of shchita is connected, is necessary. That bechina, it's different bechinas, right? Of he's converted, he's shechted. But I'm just putting the bechinas in context. The bechina of shechted, as where he's incapacitated, when we'll call it, right? That's connected. That's connected when when the hasagas are pre-internalized, because it has to be an olam where failure is impossible.
Okay.
So mitzvah when it's bekinyan das, so you could say converted. When you say when it's in the phase of emuna and things are in that delicate balance, that shouldn't be like Adam Marish and Kodam Achet. So mitzad that bechina, the Yetzer Hara is shechted. So it's shechted mitzad that we can't kick things out of balance.
Right.
Because when it's a delicate balance, you could kick things over. So mitzad that's what you need the shechting. And then mitzad the das, you can talk about he's been conquered, right? But you don't, that's when the madrega is internalized. You can talk about conquer.
Okay.
When the madrega is yet first nitgaleh, because that's the seder even in olam haba, because the hasagas are right. The hasagas are even in olam haba, even though over there it'll happen it'll happen so rapidly, but it goes emunah das. Going from higher hasagas to higher, the first moment where the new hasaga is revealed, so it's over the head, and then.
Where in this world it's a danger, it's not going to be in that world, in the next world.
There won't be a danger in the process, but it's going mitzad that bechina, and that's what happened to Klal Yisrael by Chet HaEgel, right? And that's why it's together. We talk about the Keturas that what's being balanced, right? Dargis that are bigger, and that was Adam Rishon's problem. That's Klal Yisrael. Because their dargas that they had were lamala from their das. They didn't have a kinyan gomor. Right. They were balancing these madregas on their das, and that's where even an external Yetzer, that's the nakuda to get in. And that's where you can find the koach of negias. Why does negias have such koach? The koach of negias is in that nakuda in that delicate nakuda is where the koach of negias is.
Where it has
now, of course, from that point he could pull the whole thing down. But that's where Nagias. So why can't I overcome Nagias? Give me some shochan. I got to feed my family. Why should it cloud my? No, of course. Where Nagias has its tremendous effect on a person. Why should a little bit of Nagias have? No, because a little bit of Nagias affects here, not here. But of course, because it affects there, it means that I can putting the whole binyan down. But people don't understand why Nagias have such koch. I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't affect. It affects you here. But the question is, but it ends off with Shabbos, but which Kleisa wasn't zocha to, right? But and that's your question, and not your question, but your question, I guess different question. Ad Mosai, it's like a perpetual balancing act, and the balancing act gets finer and finer and finer and finer. But and that's the of Avodas Hamishkan. Avodas Hamishkan is more balance and more balance and more balance. Ad Shabbos, Shabbos is Shabbos ba menucha. That's when the balancing act is over. And that if Adam Rishon would have only held out until Shabbos, his balancing act would have been over. But now since Adam Rishon didn't hold out till Shabbos, so we await the grand Shabbos, the Elef Hashvi, when the Ra is bottled.
I'm sorry. Until Shabbos. So, but in this world, for two things. First of all, when the Rav says Meleches HaMishkan, it has to do with more and more balance. I assume that what he means is that the malachas in the bria that we're involved with, right?
Tikkun,
right?
Which what we said earlier. Tikkun means moving from first from a coarse balance to
that's
a finer
what it represents. A Meleches HaMishkan. Okay.
Right.
Okay, until Shabbos.
Oh.
Now after, okay, so...
Now until Shabbos. Now, of course, by Adam Rishon it was literally that way.
Right.
You just had to keep the balance till Shabbos, and then, right, until Shabbos. Now, in the big picture now, that's the Elef Hashvi, the 7th millennium. Right?
Because it wasn't accomplished by Adam Rishon. Now it has to be redone begadol.
Right. But that's the original plan. The in of Avodas HaMishkan, Avodah, to bring things to a finer tune and a finer tune. You might ask Ad Mosai, you could,
Right.
Ad Mosai, we could always fine tune more and fine tune more. And then you always have this heartache of, and always this sakana until Shabbos. Until Shabbos. Then Kol Malach T'chasuya, the work's done. And that's what Adam Rishon had to do. By the first day, he just had to hold out those hours until Shabbos came in, and his balancing act would be over, right? Then it's called you are balanced, right? And you will never step out of balance again. And we can keep on, piling on hasagas, and you'll never step out of balance again. And now in the big picture, that'll happen in the Elef Hashvi. But even in this we didn't say in the share, we should have said it. But even in the Sfarim HaKadoshim, mainly in Sifrei Chasidus, but I think Ramchal says it also. In the Derech Hashem, right? Instead of Derech Hashem, right? Even on a small scale, you should know that if you would only be sensitive, ruchni-wise, you should know your balancing act of this week ends at Shabbos. And on Shabbos, you get a kinyan in all those madregas. On Shabbos, all the madregas that you worked on during the week are internalized. Comes after Shabbos, you're working on a different plateau. So even in the mini, right, the balancing act of this week, all the avodas of this week reach a state of kinyan, gomur, when it comes Shabbos. Shabbos is a mini achris hayom. And that's the medrash in this week's parsha, that on Shabbos, Moshe Rabbeinu gives back the ksarim to Klal Yisrael. It's a medrash in this week's parsha also. That by Ched Egel we lost Keser Nasa and Keser Nishma on Shabbos, which is every Shabbos is Me'ein La'asid Lavos, Me'ein Olam Haba. So Moshe Rabbeinu gives back the ksarim, and in a certain way, it could be said it's the Keser of this week. Right? This week's balancing act is over. Right? And Moshe Rabbeinu on this, on every Shabbos gives us back our ksarim, Keser Nasa, Keser Nishma. That's what the Farshim say this on the Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelko. Why b'matnas chelko? Right? Because killed first process satala, which are the ksarim of Nasa Nishma, he's happy only with his Keser Nasa and his Keser Nishma, and the rest of them he gives back to Klal Yisrael on Shabbos.
Okay. Shkoyach. I appreciate the Rav explaining that a little bit more clearly to me. That